Hi, good morning. Have you ever wondered what would it be like if a guy like Joe Goldberg was a mentor in the Hunger Games? Well, boy, do I have some good. Sorry, you haven't wondered that. That's just a me thing. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you about this book anyway because you might have heard of it. It's a little book called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Yeah, the Hunger Games prequel that follows an 18-year-old Coriolanus Snow. Well, you might as well call him Coriolanus Joe Goldberg, because this man is a manipulating, self-serving monster, even if he is a little funny sometimes. When I first looked up the audiobook and I saw that it was the same narrator as the You audiobooks, I was like, oh, this is going to be like Joe in the Hunger Games, just like as a joke. But then I started listening, and right away, Snow said something that made me realize, oh, this actually is like Joe in the Hunger Games. So, of course, obviously, I recommend this book. I didn't read the original Hunger Games books. I've seen the movies. I have them on DVD. But, I'm just a casual Hunger Games fan. So when I saw the new movie was coming out, I was kind of interested, but I didn't really care that much until I read this book. And then I watched a new trailer and I realized how excited I am. But just like with the You audiobooks, I liked seeing the trailer before listening to this book because then I had those visuals to reference as I was hearing the story. So our story starts the year of the 10th annual Hunger Games. Coriolanus Snow and his cousin Tigris are both orphans living with their grandma in her pet house, but despite having such a nice apartment, they're basically poor and barely able to keep food on the table. At this point in time, the Hunger Games are still pretty new, and they were put in place after the districts tried to rebel against the capital. Snow was only 5 years old at the time the uprising started, and early in the war, his mother died in childbirth, and the baby didn't survive either. And then his dad died fighting in the war, which ended up lasting about 3 years. Because all the family's wealth came from investments in District 13, which got bombed during the war, they haven't really been able to bounce back and rebuild their lives like others in the capital. But Snow is hell-bent on keeping up appearances while his grandmother gets really invested in her rose garden because it's the only fancy thing they have left to their family name. So far, I'm already seeing the similarities between Snow and Joe. And right off the bat, on the second page, Snow starts thinking about Tigris having to sell her body to get him a nice shirt for school or something. But he's thinking about the Snow family name and people putting a price on her because he's more worried about the worth of a Snow. He says that she's no great beauty, rude, and that she has a vulnerability that invites abuse. Because of course that's something he would notice about a person. He's just like Joe, always assessing people and sniffing out who's easy to manipulate. And throughout the book, he goes on to be introspective and thinky and condescending and judgmental. And seriously, listen to this. His mind could fixate on a problem like that, anything really, and not let go. A tendency toward obsession was hardwired into his brain and would likely be his undoing if he couldn't learn to outsmart it. I'm sorry, that's Joe. A tendency toward obsession and a fundamental inability to let something go, that's Joe. So Snow Joe is in his last year of school, and because people in the capital are traumatized by the war and they're not really interested in watching these kids fight to the death every year, Academy Dean Highbottom and head game maker Dr. Gall are appointing top students from the school to be mentors for the tributes in this year's games. This change is the first step in the wrong direction that eventually leads the games to becoming the spectacle of child murder that we're familiar with from the original stories. Until now, the Hunger Games have been very bare bones. They reap the tributes, bring them to the capital, and throw them into a cage at the zoo, all the while neglecting them any food or water. The games take place in an old amphitheater, and since it's so run down and destroyed from the war, most of the tunnels are blocked off, so the games only take place in the main arena, so they'd only have stationary cameras set up to capture what's happening. But this year, things are changing, for the worse, and it's all Snow's fault, because of course it is. He wants his tribute to win, but that doesn't seem very likely when he gets assigned the female from District 12, a loser for sure. One of Snow's classmates, Sejanus, gets Marcus, the boy from District 2, which he should be happy about. It's the boy from District 2, but he's not because he knows the kid. Sejanus grew up in District 2, and then his family got rich, so they moved to the capital. So he really struggles with the Hunger Games as a whole because he feels a connection to the districts, and he especially has a hard time being mentor to a kid that he went to school with. But who cares about people you go to school with? Not Snow. Even though he's the only one that's really tolerant of Sejanus, they're not friends. Throughout the book, they're like friends, but not really, because Snow, like Joe, is incapable of like actual love or friendship. Like, Sejanus asks to switch tributes, and Snow thinks about it for a long time, doing the whole pros and cons in his head, and ends up deciding against switching because making Sejanus keep Marcus would make him miserable. Like, that's his reason. Also, Snow does have another friend, Clementia. She doesn't matter right now, but I have to mention her for later. Snow's bummed about his tribute assignment until he finds out that Lucy Gray put on a whole show at her raping, and he's like, oh, maybe I can make this work for me. Maybe I got a shot. So he decides to show up at the train station to greet her when the tributes arrive to the capital, and he gives her one of his grandma's roses. But since he wasn't supposed to be at the train station, he gets accidentally swept up with the tributes as they're being taken to the zoo. And honestly, maybe things wouldn't have become what they did if the tributes had managed to kill him while they had him in the transport. But unfortunately, Snow survives the encounter and eventually gets out of there. While the tributes are in a cage at the zoo, Snow starts bringing Lucy Gray food. Oh, how nice of him! He brings her food when she's locked in a cage. The perfect boyfriend. Sejanus tries to do the same with Marcus, but he isn't interested. Other mentors catch on, and some of the tributes even start performing for food from onlookers until one of Snow's classmates taunts her tribute, and the tribute in turn kills the mentor, and the peacekeepers kill the tribute. The treatment of tributes in these Hunger Games are way different from the later ones. For the first 10 games, tributes are treated like straight-up animals. They're brought to the capital in trains meant for livestock. They're dumped into a cage at the zoo, and they have to perform for capital onlookers for food so they can survive. By the 74th games, the kids are pampered in the days leading up to the games, but it's still insane because they're still performing in parades and interviews to gain favor with the capital audience in hopes that it could help them survive. And it all starts with Snow. After the disaster at the zoo, Snow and Clementia are supposed to come up with a proposal to increase interest in the games, and Snow writes up the paper by himself, suggesting they let people bet on the games and participate by donating to the tributes. Gall loves this idea, but she doesn't believe that Clementia helped with the paper, so she tests this by making both students reach into a tank of snakes, and the paper might have had her name on it, but it didn't have her scent, so Clementia gets bitten and starts to turn into a snake a little bit. And because Snow is a big old cheater, he later drops Lucy Gray's handkerchief into the tank of snakes to familiarize them with her scent to protect her in the game. I don't know how much time passes before the games start, but Snow and Lucy Gray bond a little bit. Clementia's in the hospital for a while, and then the arena gets bombed, which kills some tributes and mentors. The explosions open up tunnels in the arena, giving Marcus a chance to escape, and Lucy Gray could make a run for it too, but because she's a genius, she decides to save Snow. So unfortunately, that means Snow survived the blast. And it's like, I know he lives, but every time he could die, I'm like, why didn't he just die? In their last meeting before the game starts, Snow and Lucy Gray kiss. Gross. And he gives her his mother's compact, which is like a little container with a mirror in it, so that she can sneak rat poison into the arena. The games start, and Sejanus is freaking miserable. The capital had found Marcus and they killed him, and Sejanus is just all around having a bad time in the capital. So he sneaks into the arena at night, hoping the tributes will find him and kill him, but Gall sends Snow in after him, and Snow talks him down and gets him out, not because he cares, not because they're friends, but because he had to, because Gall sent him in. So on their way out, they get caught in a fight, and Snow has to kill a tribute in self-defense. The games go on, with the betting and the sponsorship successfully increasing viewership. Most of the tributes die of natural causes. A couple of them die when Gall releases the snakes into the arena, and a few of them are killed by the rat poison that Lucy Gray stuck into the arena, leaving her the only survivor and winner of the 10th annual Hunger Games. Lucy Gray gets sent back to District 12, and instead of getting any prize or recognition for being the mentor of the victor, Snow gets an ultimatum. Join the Peacekeepers or be exposed as a cheater by Dean Highbottom. Not only does Highbottom know about Snow's antics, but he relishes the opportunity to take down Snow, since it turns out Snow's father is to blame for the Hunger Games. Dean Highbottom came up with the idea when he was drunk, and it was just theoretical, but Snow's father took the idea to Dr. Gall as a real idea, and she implemented it, and Highbottom is tormented by everything that's happened since, so he numbs his pain with morphling. Snow joins the Peacekeepers and gets sent to District 12, and Sejanus, thinking that Snow is his only friend, follows him there. In District 12, Snow discovers mockingjays and he immediately hates them with a burning passion. He hates these birds. Like, I think he thinks that they're unnatural because they come from the capital-created jabberjays breeding with mockingbirds. So their very existence is like a failure of the capital to control literally everything. That said, while he hates mockingjays, he sure loves jabberjays because after he reunites with Lucy Gray and Sejanus gets kind of wrapped up with her rebel ex-boyfriend, Snow uses a jabberjay to secretly record Sejanus confessing his plans to escape with the rebels and sends it back to Gaul at the capital. Snow later regrets this, but not really. He knows he should regret it because it was a bad thing to do, but he doesn't actually feel bad and would 1000% do the same exact thing again if it served him. A few days later, there's some scuffle in a shed that ends with Billy and the mayor's daughter dead, which is kind of karma because the mayor's daughter rigged the reaping so that Lucy Gray would be chosen, but it also means that the mayor suspects Lucy Gray as the murderer. Throw in the fact that Sejanus was hanged for treason and there's nothing really keeping the pair in District 12, so Lucy Gray plans to escape. With the gun that could connect Snow to the murders missing, Snow sees no choice but to go with her, and he loves her. He loves her and wants to be with her until he finds another way out. They make it to a cabin where Snow finds the murder weapon and realizes that if he gets rid of the weapon that could connect him to the murders, he can just go back and try and get his life back on track. There's only one problem. He let it slip to Lucy Gray that he's responsible for 3 deaths. She only knows about 2. So he's worried that while she's out looking for Katniss plans, she'll piece together his betrayal of Sejanus, so he decides, I guess I gotta kill her now. Just like that. One minute he loves her, the next she has to die for him to live the life that he wants. So he heads out to hunt her down, and after getting bitten by a snake and freaking out because of what happened to Clementia, he just shoots into the woods, possibly hitting Lucy Gray, but not knowing if he killed her or not. He ditches the weapon, and with the gun and the girlfriend taken care of, Snow heads back to District 12, where he proudly gets returned back to the capital at the request of Dr. Gall, who wants him to study under her and assume her worldview that people are violent and they need her kind of authoritarian government in order to keep the peace and avoid devolving into chaos. Coriolanus Snow started the story with no parents, no money, no nothing, and he spent his time manipulating and calculating and falling in love with the girl only to turn on a dime and decide to kill her. And then, in the end, he freaking ends up on top. That sounds like a season of You to me. I think I already said it, but I really liked this book, and it was another one that I had so much fun listening to. I don't think I've read a book since high school, but so far I'm 2 for 2 on these audiobooks. So my question is, does the story of Coriolanus Snow predict the last season of You? I mean, Snow lands on top, and I think I've established that Snow equals Joe. So by the transitive property of equality and the power vested in me, I predict that Joe ends up on top. President Snow, President Joe. It's right there. It's kind of funny. I sent in my video about the You audiobook that I was listening to another book where the character was basically Joe talking about this book. And as I was working on this video, I watched a show where I was like, is this girl just female Joe? So I might have to make a video about that now. Should that just be my niche, talking about shows and books, but only in the context of how I can relate them to you? Maybe. You know, I spent $11 on this book this morning. I ran out to get it just so I could hold it up in the video. I listened to the audiobook. What am I going to do with this?